7. Truths about men who live alone without a girlfriend. Have you ever wondered why some of the most powerful and influential individuals in history chose to walk alone? Not because they had to, but because they wanted to? It's easy to get caught up in the modern world's constant push for companionship, relationships, and social validation. Everywhere we turn, there's this unspoken belief that happiness is found in being with someone, that success is measured by who we're with, and that solitude is something to fear. We're told that life is better with someone by our side, and while companionship certainly has its beauty, there's another side to this story, a side that many are afraid to explore. What if I told you that the true power doesn't lie in being surrounded by people? What if it's found in being able to stand alone, strong and content, without relying on anyone else for validation or fulfillment? What if solitude, rather than being a curse, is actually a superpower, an opportunity to build strength, master your emotions, and discover a deeper sense of purpose? I know it's easy to feel like something is missing if you're walking through life without a significant other, but let me challenge that idea. There's a different kind of man, a man who embraces solitude, not as a sign of weakness, but as a path to inner peace, resilience, and independence. It's a path that leads to the kind of freedom most people can only dream of. A man who walks alone, not because he's lost or lonely, but because he's learned something that many people never will: how to be truly content with who he is, regardless of his relationship status. And that's exactly what I want to dive into with you today. We're going to explore how solitude, often misunderstood and feared by so many, is actually one of the most empowering things you can embrace. I'll share with you 7 truths about the man who walks alone. Truths that will challenge the way you see yourself and the way you see solitude. This isn't about rejecting relationships or claiming that companionship doesn't matter. It's about learning to thrive in solitude, understanding that true strength comes from within, and realizing that when you stop depending on others for your happiness, you become truly free. So, if you've ever felt different for choosing independence, if you've ever questioned whether you're missing out on something by walking alone, or if you've simply wanted to understand what real strength looks like when it's forged in solitude, stick around. By the end of this, you'll see the journey of being alone in a whole new light. You'll understand the power of standing on your own, not just surviving, but thriving, and you'll discover that the man who learns to walk alone is unstoppable. Let's get started. Solitude versus social pressure. But let's take a step back for a moment and think about this. Why do we feel this pressure? Why do we believe that a relationship is the marker of success or happiness? The truth is, society has conditioned us to think this way. For centuries, there's been this idea that a person's worth is tied to their ability to find a partner, to settle down, to build a life with someone else. It's everywhere. It's in the stories we hear, the songs we listen to, and the advertisements we see. We're told that the ultimate goal is companionship, and without it, something is missing. Now, I'm not here to say that relationships aren't important. They can be incredibly fulfilling and add richness to our lives. But here's the thing. There's a difference between choosing a relationship and feeling like you need one to be whole. That's where the pressure comes in. It's the idea that if you're not in a relationship, you must be lonely, incomplete, or somehow less successful. This narrative is deeply ingrained, and it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that you're failing if you're walking through life without a partner. The real problem here is that we've been sold a lie, the lie that happiness only comes from being with someone else. We see other people's relationships, their constant companionship, and we think that's the key to fulfillment. But here's what's really interesting. When you look at the most successful and powerful figures in history, many of them spent long periods of their lives alone. Not because they couldn't find a partner, but because they knew something that most people don't: that solitude is not a weakness. In fact, solitude is one of the most powerful tools you can have. It's not something to fear or avoid, it's something to embrace. Imagine for a moment That instead of seeing being alone as a sign of something missing in your life, you saw it as an opportunity to discover yourself, to grow, to build inner strength that doesn't rely on anyone else. This is the shift in perspective we need. Solitude isn't an emptiness that needs to be filled with distractions. It's a space where you can get to know yourself in ways that relationships and social pressures never allow. And when you're comfortable being alone, when you're at peace with who you are, that's when true strength emerges. So let's challenge this notion that you're somehow less than because you're walking alone. What if I told you that walking alone could be your greatest source of power? Fact 1. Mastering self-sufficiency. Now let's talk about what happens when you truly embrace solitude, not as something you have to endure, but as something you choose. The first truth that emerges when a man learns to walk alone is the incredible power of self-sufficiency. There's a certain kind of strength that comes when you know you can rely on yourself for everything, when you no longer have to depend on anyone else for emotional support, for someone to handle the practical aspects of life, or even for your happiness. When you live alone, you quickly realize that the responsibility for everything, your happiness, your well-being, your success, falls squarely on your shoulders. And at first, this can feel overwhelming. The weight of doing everything yourself, handling the bills, the chores, the emotional ups and downs, might seem like a lot. But here's where it gets interesting. Over time, this creates an incredible sense of self-sufficiency. You learn to handle the everyday challenges on your own, and in doing so, you build a resilience that most people never have to develop. You're not waiting for someone to help you cook dinner, clean your space, or give you emotional reassurance when life gets tough. You're doing it yourself. And while this may feel like a lot at first, it teaches you a fundamental truth. You are enough. You don't need anyone else to complete you, because you've already learned to complete yourself. This self-sufficiency extends beyond just practical tasks. It seeps into your mindset, your attitude, and your emotional life. When you're alone, you're forced to face your emotions, your fears, and your thoughts head on. There's no partner to turn to for reassurance. It's just you and your mind. And while that can be intimidating, it's also incredibly powerful. Because when you learn to master your own emotions, when you stop relying on someone else to calm your anxiety or boost your self-esteem, you begin to realize how much control you truly have over your life. Imagine for a moment what it would feel like to know deep down that you can handle anything that comes your way. Whether it's a flat tire, a tough day at work, or a personal setback, you know that you have the inner resources to get through it. That's the kind of unshakable confidence that comes from living alone. And that's the kind of power that no one can take away from you. Now, I want you to think about this. How many people do you know who constantly seek validation from others? How many people can't sit with themselves for even a few minutes without reaching for their phone or texting someone for reassurance? In our world today, so many of us are conditioned to believe that we need others to feel okay. But the man who chooses solitude, who learns to be self-sufficient, doesn't need to turn to anyone else for reassurance. He is at peace with himself. And this isn't just about independence, it's about true freedom. So let's take a moment and ask ourselves, if we could learn to handle everything on our own, without relying on anyone else for validation or support, what would that feel like? How much stronger would we be? How much more in control of our lives would we be? And the best part is, this isn't just an abstract idea. This is something you can begin practicing right now. Start with small steps. Take responsibility for your own emotions. Handle your daily tasks without relying on anyone else, and begin to cultivate a sense of self-sufficiency that allows you to stand strong on your own. When you do, you'll start to see how much power there really is in walking alone. And here's the key. When you learn to be self-sufficient, to rely on yourself, you no longer fear solitude. You begin to see it for what it really is, a powerful tool for personal growth and a path to inner peace. And once you've mastered that, Once you've learned to thrive in your own company, you'll never feel incomplete again, because you'll know, deep down, that you are enough. And that, my friend, is when true freedom begins. The first truth about walking alone is this: self-sufficiency isn't just a skill, it's a superpower. And when you embrace it, you unlock a level of strength and confidence that most people will never experience. It's the foundation for everything else that follows. So, are you ready to start mastering it? Let's keep going. Fact 2. Embracing solitude as a source of strength. Now that we've talked about how self-sufficiency empowers you to stand tall on your own, let's dive into something even more profound: solitude itself. Most people, when they think about being alone, start to feel uncomfortable. There's this immediate association with loneliness, isolation, and emptiness. But let me challenge that for a moment. What if solitude isn't something to fear, but something to embrace? What if, rather than seeing it as an absence, we saw it as a presence, a space to grow, reflect, and discover who we truly are? When you're alone, you're given a unique opportunity that most people don't ever have: the time and space to truly understand yourself. Without the distractions of a busy social life or the constant chatter of other people's expectations, you're free to listen to your own thoughts, your own desires, your own soul. This, my friend, is where true strength begins. It's in solitude that you find clarity. You start to hear your own voice, and it becomes a powerful force in your life. The noise of the world fades away, and you can finally focus on what really matters: your goals, your dreams, and your purpose. Think about it. Some of the greatest minds in history, philosophers, leaders, warriors, spent significant portions of their lives in solitude. They didn't shy away from it. They didn't fear it. Instead, they understood something that most people don't. Solitude is a tool for growth. It's a space where you can confront yourself without the distractions of the outside world and become the person you're meant to be. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, said it best: "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Those are powerful words, and they ring true. In today's fast-paced world, most people don't experience true solitude. They might be alone physically, but their minds are constantly occupied with scrolling through social media, texting people, or binge-watching TV shows just to avoid the silence. But the man who embraces solitude doesn't run from silence. He welcomes it. He uses it to train his mind, to reflect on his life, and to cultivate the mental clarity that most people can't even begin to imagine. It's easy to see solitude as a void that needs to be filled, but that's the wrong way to look at it. Solitude isn't emptiness, it's an opportunity. It's a chance to dive deep into your own thoughts, to reflect on your actions, and to ask yourself the hard questions. Who am I really? What do I want out of life? What kind of person do I want to become? And when you spend time alone with these questions, when you get comfortable with your own company, you'll find that the answers come more clearly. The fear of being alone slowly fades, and in its place, you discover something powerful: peace. When you embrace solitude, you stop needing external validation. You no longer look to others to define your worth. You realize that you don't need anyone else to feel whole, because you've already found that wholeness within yourself. And that's where real strength is born, not in the noise of the world, but in the stillness of your own mind. Fact 3. Emotional control and inner peace. As you begin to embrace solitude, something incredible starts to happen. You begin to develop emotional control. In a world where emotions often feel like they're pulling us in 1,000 directions, solitude gives you the space to understand and master them. Think about it. When you're constantly surrounded by people, when there's always someone there to reassure you or distract you, it's easy to let your emotions take control. But when you're alone, you have no choice but to face your emotions head on. You can't run from them anymore. You have to confront them, understand them, and learn how to manage them. This is one of the most powerful aspects of solitude, how it teaches you to take control of your emotional life. When you're on your own, there's no one to vent to, no one to lean on when things go wrong. You can't rely on a partner to calm you down or validate your feelings. It's just you. And while that might sound like a disadvantage at first, it's actually a gift. Because in this space, you learn that you have everything you need to regulate your emotions. You might feel anger rise up when things don't go your way, or sadness when life throws you a curveball. But instead of reacting impulsively, instead of letting those emotions dictate your actions, you begin to learn how to process them. You realize that emotions are temporary. They come and go. And by not reacting immediately, you give yourself the time and space to choose how to respond in a way that aligns with your values, rather than letting your feelings control you. This is what the Stoics believed. The true strength comes from within. Marcus Aurelius, again, put it so simply. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. When you stop looking to external factors, other people, your circumstances, your relationships, to determine how you feel, you begin to take ownership of your emotional state. You realize that no matter what happens on the outside, you have the power to control how you respond. Living alone without a partner forces you to develop this emotional resilience. There's no one to hold your hand through every tough moment. But when you learn to face your emotions on your own, you become mentally and emotionally unshakable. You stop reacting out of fear, desperation, or anxiety. You begin to respond from a place of inner peace, knowing that whatever happens, you've got this. You don't need someone else to stabilize you because you've learned to stabilize yourself. Think about how many people lose themselves in relationships, how they become emotionally dependent, how a single argument or moment of doubt can send them spiraling. The man who has learned to thrive in solitude doesn't have this problem. He's learned that his emotional state is his responsibility, and because of that, he carries himself with a sense of calm that others often admire but rarely understand. His peace is unshakable, his mind is clear, and that makes him incredibly powerful. So, if you're looking for a way to gain control over your emotions and find true inner peace, the answer lies in solitude. It's in those quiet moments, when there's no one else around to distract you, that you can really begin to understand your emotions, process them, and take control of your mental state. This is the path to emotional freedom. And when you start walking it, you'll find that nothing can break you. Not anger, not fear, not sadness, because you've already mastered yourself. Fact 4. Freedom. Let's talk about something that we all crave: freedom. But what does freedom really mean? Most people, when they think about freedom, imagine being able to do whatever they want, whenever they want. They picture a life without responsibilities, without obligations. And yes, while that might sound appealing on the surface, the kind of freedom that really changes your life isn't about the absence of responsibility. It's about the freedom to choose. The freedom to make decisions based on what's truly best for you, rather than being constantly influenced by external pressures. And that's where living alone, choosing solitude, comes into play. When you don't have a partner, you're no longer beholden to anyone else's expectations. There are no compromises you have to make, because someone else has different needs or desires. You're free to make decisions that align with your values, your purpose, and your goals. You can focus on your own personal growth, your career, your passions, without worrying about fitting into someone else's schedule or compromising on your dreams. This is the kind of freedom that most people only dream about. Imagine being able to pursue your dreams without needing approval from anyone. You want to change careers? Go for it. You want to move to a new city or country? The choice is yours. You're not tied down by anyone else's desires or commitments. It's just you, making choices that serve your best interest, not someone else's. And it's not just about the freedom to make decisions. It's about financial freedom too. Think about how much more control you have over your finances, when you're not spending money on dates, gifts, vacations, or the shared expenses that come with living with someone else. You can build your wealth at your own pace without worrying about having to keep up with someone else's lifestyle. You can focus on saving, investing, and building a secure future for yourself. And that's a level of financial freedom that many people never experience because they're constantly caught up in the cycle of maintaining a relationship that demands financial resources. This kind of freedom doesn't just apply to your finances. It applies to your mental and emotional life too. When you're not constantly seeking validation from a partner or the approval of others, you're free to focus on what truly matters to you. You're free to grow, to evolve, and to pursue your own happiness without the constant need to please anyone else. You stop making decisions based on what you think others want for you. You make them based on what you truly want for yourself. And that, my friend, is a kind of freedom that no amount of money or relationship can buy. Now, think about the people around you. How many of them are constantly bogged down by obligations, whether it's a partner, family expectations, or societal pressures? Most people's lives are shaped by what others expect of them. But when you embrace solitude, you gain the rarest kind of freedom. The freedom to live life on your own terms without the weight of anyone else's expectations holding you back. And when you understand this freedom, when you truly realize how powerful it is, you begin to live with a sense of purpose and clarity that most people can't even begin to comprehend. So, if you've ever felt weighed down by the demands of others, if you've ever wished you could make a bold decision without having to answer to anyone, this is the kind of freedom that comes from living alone. It's the freedom to truly own your life, to make choices that align with who you are, and to shape your future without limitations. And when you embrace that freedom, you'll realize just how powerful you really are. Fact 5. Cultivating a deeper sense of purpose. Now, let's talk about purpose. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, if you don't know your purpose, you're just drifting through life. And there's some truth to that. Without a sense of purpose, it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day distractions of life, work, social obligations, and the endless cycle of seeking validation from others. But when you live alone, when you're comfortable with solitude, you're given the space to really focus on what matters to you. You don't have the noise of relationships, of people constantly demanding your attention or energy. Instead, you have the time to dig deep, to reflect, and to discover your true purpose in life. This is one of the most powerful aspects of solitude. It's not just about being alone. It's about using that time to create a life of meaning and direction. When you're constantly surrounded by people, you can easily get caught up in their expectations, their desires, and their goals. You start living for others instead of for yourself. But when you're alone, you don't have that external influence. You have the freedom to think about your life, to define what success means to you, and to chart a course that's true to your values. Think about some of the greatest people in history. They weren't constantly distracted by relationships or social pressures. They had a sense of purpose that drove them, and they used their time alone to hone their craft, to study, and to build a life of meaning. Whether it was philosophers, inventors, or leaders, they understood that purpose doesn't come from external sources. It comes from within. And the best way to find that purpose is through solitude. When you start to embrace solitude, you create the perfect environment to discover your purpose. You have the mental clarity to ask yourself, what do I want out of life? What kind of person do I want to be? What legacy do I want to leave behind? These are the questions that get lost in the noise of daily life, but in solitude, they become front and center. You have the opportunity to reflect deeply, to take deliberate action, and to build a life that aligns with your highest values. This is where discipline comes into play. When you don't have external distractions or the pull of a relationship to keep you from your goals, you can focus. You can work on yourself, on your skills, on your passions. You can dedicate time each day to becoming the person you know you can be, without worrying about what anyone else thinks or expects. And in doing so, you cultivate a deep sense of purpose that doesn't rely on external validation. The man who walks alone isn't just surviving, he's thriving. He's building a life of meaning, a life that's driven by purpose, not by the fleeting desires of others. And when you learn to cultivate this kind of purpose in your own life, you'll find that the distractions of the world no longer hold power over you. You'll be unstoppable. Fact 6. Stronger, more meaningful connections. Now, you might be thinking, if I'm walking alone, does that mean I can't form strong relationships? Does it mean I'm destined to be isolated forever? And here's where the power of solitude shows up in a surprising way. The truth is, the more comfortable you become with being alone, the stronger your relationships with others can actually become. It might sound counterintuitive, but stay with me for a moment. When you're at peace with yourself, when you're no longer seeking validation or approval from others, you begin to attract a different kind of connection. Think about it. When you're desperate for a relationship, or when you're constantly trying to fill a void with people, you tend to settle for shallow connections. You might find yourself in relationships or friendships that drain you, or that don't truly align with who you are. But when you embrace solitude and stop chasing after companionship out of fear or loneliness, something remarkable happens. You start to value quality over quantity. You begin to form relationships that are deep, meaningful, and truly fulfilling. The man who has learned to walk alone doesn't need to surround himself with people just for the sake of it. He doesn't feel the urge to constantly be in the company of others to feel complete. Instead, he's selective about the relationships he forms. He looks for people who add value to his life, who challenge him to grow, who share his values and his vision for life. And when he does form connections, they're strong, genuine, and rooted in mutual respect and growth. Think about Seneca's words: associate with people who are likely to improve you. This is the approach the man who thrives in solitude takes with his relationships. He doesn't waste time with superficial connections or relationships that don't serve him. Instead, he cultivates friendships and partnerships that are built on depth, trust, and shared values. And in doing so, he creates relationships that are not only fulfilling, but also supportive of his personal growth. Now, you might be wondering how to apply this in your own life. It starts by being okay with being alone first. When you're not in a rush to fill every moment with social interactions, you start to realize that the best connections come when you stop forcing them. You allow relationships to develop naturally, and you're more discerning about the people you let into your life. This doesn't mean avoiding relationships altogether. It means cultivating connections that are worth your time and energy. So, the more you embrace solitude, the more you'll find yourself surrounded by the right people. Not because you're seeking them out, but because your peace, your inner strength, and your sense of self will attract the right kind of relationships. And when you form these deep, authentic connections, you'll realize something incredible. You don't need to be with someone to feel fulfilled. You can enjoy their company, and they can enjoy yours, without the need for constant validation or dependence. That's the beauty of strong, meaningful relationships. They're built on mutual respect and understanding, not on neediness or fear. Fact 7. Becoming unshakable. Now, let's talk about the final truth, the one that brings everything together, becoming unshakable. This is the result of everything we've talked about so far. When you've learned to be self-sufficient, when you've embraced solitude as a source of strength, when you've developed emotional control, freedom, and a sense of purpose, you become someone who cannot be easily broken. You become unshakable. The Stoics had a saying, "A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be." This is the essence of Stoicism. It's about accepting life as it is, not reacting impulsively to every obstacle or setback, and finding peace within yourself no matter what's happening in the world around you. The man who has spent time alone, who has learned to master his emotions and his mind, develops this kind of inner stability. He isn't easily swayed by external circumstances. He doesn't panic when things go wrong. He doesn't crumble under pressure. Instead, he moves through life with a calm, unshakable sense of discipline and assurance. Think about the people who are constantly reacting to life, who get swept up in drama, who panic when things don't go as planned, or who let their emotions control them. That's not the man who has embraced solitude. He's learned that the external world is unpredictable, and he's fine with that, because he knows that he is in control of how he responds. He's prepared for whatever comes his way. He doesn't let his happiness depend on what's happening around him. Instead, his peace comes from within. This is where the real power lies. The man who is unshakable has something that no one can take from him. He is not reliant on others to feel complete. He doesn't seek validation from external sources, and he isn't thrown off course by the ups and downs of life. His foundation is solid because it's built from the inside out. He understands that life will always throw challenges his way, but he's prepared for them. He knows that setbacks, failures, and rejections are just temporary moments in a much larger journey, and he's unfazed by them. This is the power of the Stoic mindset. It's about accepting life as it is, not as you wish it would be. It's about finding peace and contentment, no matter what happens around you. And when you learn to embody this mindset, when you stop being at the mercy of external circumstances, you become truly free. You stop caring what others think, you stop worrying about what you don't have, and you stop letting anything shake your sense of self-worth. So the question is, are you ready to become unshakable? Are you ready to embrace the kind of inner peace that comes from mastering yourself? The journey starts with solitude. It starts with taking the time to understand yourself, to build your inner strength, and to learn how to respond to life with calmness, clarity, and discipline. And once you've mastered that, nothing can break you. Nothing can steal your peace. You'll be unshakable. And that, my friend, is the ultimate freedom. Conclusion. The true power of solitude. As we come to the end of this journey, I want to take a moment to reflect on everything we've explored together. The idea of solitude has often been misunderstood, sometimes even feared. Society tells us that happiness, fulfillment, and success are only possible when we have someone by our side. We're constantly bombarded with the idea that relationships are the ultimate measure of a person's worth. But through the course of our conversation, I hope I've shown you something different. The truth that solitude, when embraced, is not a weakness, but a profound source of strength, freedom, and self-discovery. The man who learns to walk alone isn't lost. He isn't lonely or incomplete. In fact, he is the opposite. He is self-sufficient, emotionally strong, and at peace with himself. He understands that happiness does not come from relying on someone else, but from the deep, internal work of mastering his own mind and emotions. He doesn't need anyone to complete him because he is already whole. And this is the true power of solitude. It allows you to discover that you are enough, just as you are. Throughout history, many of the greatest minds, the strongest warriors, and the most influential leaders spent long periods alone, not because they had to, but because they knew that solitude is where real growth happens. They understood that in those quiet moments, away from the noise of the world, you can find clarity, purpose, and the kind of strength that cannot be shaken. And when you embrace that kind of solitude, when you learn to be at peace with your own company, you unlock a freedom that most people never experience. You become unshakable. But let me be clear. This isn't about rejecting relationships or isolating yourself from the world. It's about finding balance. It's about realizing that true connection comes not from neediness or desperation, but from a place of inner peace. When you are content on your own, when you no longer depend on others for your happiness, you attract the right relationships, the ones that are meaningful and aligned with who you are. You choose quality over quantity, depth over distraction. The man who embraces solitude knows that he is in control of his life. He is free to pursue his goals, his passions, and his purpose without being held back by external expectations. He has the space to develop emotional control, to build a sense of purpose, and to create a life that is driven by his own values, not by society's pressures. And in doing so, he becomes the best version of himself. So if you've ever felt different for choosing independence, if you've ever questioned whether you're missing out on something by walking alone, or if you've simply wanted to understand what real strength looks like when it's forged in solitude, know this: you are on a path that few ever truly walk. You are learning to rely on yourself, to grow in ways that others might never experience, and in doing so, you're becoming unstoppable. The power of solitude is not something to be feared or avoided. It is a gift, a chance to connect with yourself, to master your emotions, and to build a life of meaning, purpose, and freedom. So, embrace it, lean into it, and watch as your life transforms. Because when you can thrive in solitude, nothing can stand in your way. You become truly free, and that is the greatest power of all.